So, welcome to Connecting for Recovery. Wanted to honor a request that I got today on a topic. It's a really freaking good one, I must say. And I really don't know that we've talked about it in our setting as much. So, I want to apply it to our world, maybe give it some synonymous terms so that hopefully we feel a little bit more empowered because we know what it is when things have more than one word. Kind of just depends on the lens that you're looking at it through. So, the topic that I wanted to talk about tonight is burnout. And there's lots of parts of that. And it depends on, like I said, which lens you're looking at as to what information you may get on it. But I want to introduce it to you guys through the lens of recovery of codependency and maybe use some synonymous terms so that you feel a little better about, okay. Um, because I know I've definitely experienced it several times. And when codependency is in our backstory, there is a way that we do things. There is a pattern or a process that we follow that, for lack of better terms, leads to burnout. So I'm going to use some really Amberism examples first. In looking at burnout as apathy, exhaustion, done. One can have a favorite food. And if one eats that favorite food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 15 days straight, that will no longer be one's favorite food. It just won't. Doesn't matter if it's key lime pie. Doesn't matter if it's Paula Deen's key lime pie, which is my favorite. Doesn't matter. When we reach a point, when we cross over this imaginary line, when we hit this part of our process, something happens and we're like, I don't ever want to eat key lime pie again. So let's talk about that. Let's digest a little bit what happens from a neurobiology standpoint, but from a process or behavior standpoint too, because if codependency is a new term for you, or if it's one that you're still learning, what we know about our pattern of behavior is we fall in really quick. There's not a whole lot of introductions and getting to know something or someone. And what surprises a lot of people is that's not just with relationships. Yes, our world and our culture looks at the stereotypical couple where one is suffering from a substance use disorder and the other one is suffering from codependency. Yes, of course, that is what it means. However, as humans, we are relational beings. So my relationship with food, my relationship with work, my relationship with my boys, my husband, my relationship with exercise, my relationship with my dogs. I am relational in everything that matters to me. And if you sit back and think about that for a moment, notice if there's any patterns or behaviors that you fall into or that you step into. When you start a new habit, do you jump all in? I'm going to start exercising. This is the first of the year shit that happens, right? I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to quit drinking Mountain Dew. I'm going to walk my dog every day. I'm going to not eat carbs, or eat sugar all at once. Like I'm having a visceral response just saying that sarcastically. My body's very familiar with this. So when we're thinking about how we show up relationally, how we show up in our process, there's a chemical reaction that's also taking part in that. It's called dopamine. It's the happy hormone. When I get a new project, I'm speaking in the I for real. When I get a new project, if I start a new website, the new Tolbert consulting site, I can fall into Canva and building this new website for 6 hours. It can be 2 a.m. and I'm still building the website. There is excitement in our body. There is curiosity. It's something new. It's something different. But what we also notice is it's not just with new projects. It can also happen relationally and feel like depression, like this apathy, this hopelessness of what's happening? Like, why do I not care about this anymore? Why do I never want to eat key lime pie again? Why am I showing up relationally in this relationship with fill in the blank with all this apathy? Well, think back to your backstory. Was there any avoidance? Was there any, I'm going to use this word because it shows up culturally appropriately, addiction, when I overuse or overdid anything? In other words, was there a lot of all or nothing and a little bit of or no balance? I don't know about you guys, but when something that I experience is fun or cool, like building a website, that's cool to me. That is how I have fun. I'm not so good at having fun sometimes. And when I go to my backstory and see how that shows up, there wasn't a whole lot of times that I had power. There wasn't a whole lot of times that I got to decide what I wanted to do. And when I did decide those things, or I do decide those things, there's not a lot of great balance in it, meaning boundaries. Do I just have one piece of key lime pie once a month when I want it? That's a big waste of pie. I guess I could put it in the freezer or buy one piece at a time. That's what I do. When I'm building a website or I'm starting a new project, there's a lot of momentum that happens. There's a lot of dopamine that happens. And when the rest of my world isn't looking so good, I'll find that thing to pull in more dopamine. But what happens? What happens when I don't regulate that? What happens when I don't use boundaries and I stay up till 2 a.m. or I'm on my 4th day of eating pie? What happens with that is my body starts to say, I don't want this anymore. It's no longer fun. It's not giving me the dopamine that I want. In fact, it's giving me consequences that I've been avoiding, consequences that I've not been noticing by staying up until 2 a.m. and my husband's upset because I didn't even see him tonight. Or working on these projects, or oftentimes working a job that I may not always have the power or authority to make changes in. Notice what happens in your body when I say the power and authority. Do you go back to your backstory? Do you go back to a time where you didn't get to choose what was fun or you didn't get to choose what you were doing? And being able to look at burnout very similarly to in codependency, it is this excitement, this honeymoon stage. Do it, keep going. And then boom, all of a sudden it's not so fun anymore. And what happens as we become adults or adult children is that process happens a lot faster. If you think back to relationships that you had in the honeymoon period of relationships, that could have lasted 6 months to a year. And think about how quickly you get tired of things now. Does it happen faster? Yeah. When I am allowing my outside world to determine my contentment, my joy, my peace, and I use things to dope up, I'm going to hit a wall. I'm going to hit burnout. And that's really scary to hear because one doesn't think that building a website is doping up. But when part of my backstory is I don't get to control what I'm doing, I don't get power to be who I want to be or do the things that I want to be. And then as an adult, I start to find the things that I want and I like, and I use them more because I like them or because they're fun. What are you noticing about the relationship with me and me? There's not as many boundaries. There's not as much structure. I'm not balancing authority or requirement with joy and rest. When we hit burnout, it's emotional unavailability. And when we're in a space of emotional unavailability, that gets really scary because sometimes we're calling it burnout because maybe it's about work. Or sometimes sorry, Willow is scratching my leg to pet her. Or sometimes I'm in a state of unavailability because my kids have been in a really hard stage of their life for several months, and maybe they're not sleeping well, or maybe they're starting college and they're needing a lot. Willow, I see you. Willow's needing a lot. But noticing in your body when you reach a state of burnout, it is a state of exhaustion. And I want you to think of a state of exhaustion like being thirsty. If you're thirsty, we needed to already drink a long time ago. If my body's giving me the signs and the symptoms that I'm exhausted, I needed rest a long time ago. And what I'm willing to bet is if you're in this recovery program, you may or may not have even experienced rest, because there's a difference in rest and sleep. A big difference. The word balance is at times so foreign to me. And that's the word that comes up for me as the antidote to burnout, is when I'm in a state of codependency, when I'm in a relapse, when I'm in burnout. It's because I'm in scarcity. I'm already dehydrated. I missed so many marks. So what that looks like is recovery, physical recovery, emotional recovery, mental recovery, slowing down and looking at what am I grieving? What have I lost? What do I need or want more of? Because burnout is self-inflicted. That doesn't feel good to say. It doesn't feel good to know. And recovery gives me the gift of self-awareness. If I don't have the awareness that something I'm doing is something I don't like, or for me is wrong or bad, then I don't know to do anything to change it. So that gift of awareness helps me see, okay, my recovery is pretty good today, or maybe my recovery is not doing so good today. But either way, there is no plateau that happens for recovery, right? It's just this plane that's constantly moving back and forth based on what I'm putting into it. And sometimes that's my world that's happening around me, and sometimes the stars align and it's great. But being able to look at and having the gift of awareness so that I can say, wow, I'm glad I'm feeling or noticing that I'm not feeling, which is burnout or emotional unavailability, so that I can do something about it. Talk a little bit about what is the tool, what is the reparenting technique? It's okay if that's a new word for you. Um, when you think about, thanks, Sean. When you think about your backstory, And you think about um, how your story and your patterns have continued. I remember a part of my recovery when that was really hard for me to apply. And what I mean by that was I did drink for a little bit, but then I chose not to drink. My dad died when I was 24. I stopped drinking before he died. And I thought because I stopped drinking that I wouldn't become him. And what my recovery taught me is the theme or the pattern continues without the same substance or behavior. So if that's new to you, what I mean is where my dad would use alcohol, I would use work. When we talk about what our culture calls addiction, uh, the Healing Collective, I don't like that term because it places blame on the person suffering. And what research has proven is the root of addiction is trauma. Addiction only manifests because I'm trying to take care of myself and I have no better way or no knowing how to do that. So when we look at my backstory and I look at what was modeled, he drank, I worked, 15, working full time, running a McDonald's, and going to school full time because it was safer. And I'm really good. I'm a really good worker. Willow says so too. I'm a really good worker. I'm really good at productivity because I'm a control addict. When I can figure out how to be efficient and I'm over projects, I'm really good at it. So that would be how I was able to shine, show up, get attention, be acknowledged. And the problem with that is thematically what happened is I'm doing to me what was done to me. My parents who suffered from their own numbing and medicating because of their own trauma did not have the emotional availability for me. So my needs were not met. That is not blame and fault. That is fact. So what I learned from them was don't take care of my own needs, just do. I'm not a being, I'm a doer. I'm good at doing. I make a lot of people happy. I'm really good at it. And I'm doing to me what was done to me. So by working, by throwing myself into projects, by not knowing how to use boundaries, I want to acknowledge the words self-infliction. But Willow, Piper, excuse me, thank you. They're digging in their beds. I do want to acknowledge the word self-infliction, but I also want to acknowledge the pattern. That is what was modeled. I'm only doing what I saw. And I want a different life. And so to no longer do to me what was done to me, for Amber in my life, what that looks like is structure. Now, you guys or somebody may say, I don't know, Am, your life is pretty structured. You're a mom, you're a boss, you're a therapist, you're this, you're that. Yeah, no, it wasn't. Because throughout my life, and I'm still on my journey, I share that I'm 17 years in, not because I'm the standard or what we're trying to meet. I say that by I'm still in it 17 years in. That's what I mean by that. And learning to be emotionally available to me is learning how to be okay with the quiet. It's learning how to be okay with the quiet. Because my body, if I'm sitting on the couch and I hear my husband drive up, I will jump up and start doing something. Never has my husband ever. I am very aware of where that comes from. And it's I need to be doing something. There's so much stuff to do. So much like when I teach pathology is a mentality, addiction is a mentality. It's not about the substance. It's not about the behavior, the porn, the sex, the shopping, the money, the alcohol, the pills, the food. It can be anything. That is only what I'm using to try to feel better. But that gets blamed for it. So when I say a pathology is a mentality, so is recovery. Recovery is a mentality. What we know from a neurobiology standpoint is until there is repair, until there is healing, I will navigate my world by recreating what is familiar. Let me say that again. It's very important. I'm going to navigate my world by recreating what's familiar. That's not peace. Peace did not exist in my childhood. It was unpredictable. It was chaotic. It was labor intensive. I knew how to do and go. And so for many of us that are in relationship with overfunctioning, the tool is about how do I slow down? What am I avoiding? What am I avoiding? What am I running from? I can speak into that personally for me. I've shared with you guys, I do a lot of work on this, and I've shared with you guys that my boys are not typical. They're not mainstream. They both have sensory processing disorders on opposite end of the spectrums. And it's hard. Mommying is hard. It's the hardest job I've ever done. And work is easy. So I'm very aware sometimes when I throw myself into Canva, it's because it's fucking easier. I can control Canva. And what I'm doing until 2 a.m. is abandoning myself, which is avoiding and abandoning at times my kids because it's easier. So is it self-inflicted? It is. And sometimes it's about survival because I don't fucking know what to do different. It's hard. So I want to offer you just that self-validation, self-compassion, I am who I am because of where I come from. I didn't cause it. I can't control it. I sure as fuck can't cure it. And what I can do is reparent it. When my husband says, honey, I really need you to stop. That's our code. We have agreed to that. And it pops me out. Because I could really just let him do it all at night sometimes. So when you look at your story and you're looking at what am I recreating? Is it chaos? Is it unpredictability? And maybe you're in a place in recovery where it feels really different. What is my mentality about that? Do I welcome the lack of chaos? Am I in a place where I can be grateful because where I am is actually what I've learned, what I've earned? I've earned my recovery. I've worked my ass off for this recovery. And those are those I statements some of you guys were talking about. It's being able to own where I am in my recovery, but also being able to look at my attitude about it. If I haven't worked really hard for it, what does that mean for me? And just because I'm capable of it does not fucking mean I'm supposed to be doing it. I'm capable of a shit ton. Does not mean I'm supposed to be doing it. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I hope the mentality of pathology is also mentality of recovery. It's a new way of life. And it's also looking at, in my new way of life, how do I raise that vibration? How do I own that frequency? Living in a state of gratitude. I don't have to be in a state of numbness. Just because nothing's happening, I can choose to be in a state of gratitude, which is a much higher frequency. If that's unfamiliar to you, basically what I'm saying is choosing to be in a state of gratitude is taking back my power rather than feeling powerless.